At this time, we'll call to order the regular City Council meeting, July 9th, 2018. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lisa, let it show that everyone's in attendance tonight. And we'll look to approve the minutes of June 25th, 2018. Councilmember Parisian.
Good evening. I have a change on page 6. It's going to be the second line down. Andrea Meyer has another E in it, so it should be M-E-Y-E-R. Thanks, Lisa.
Councilmember Kennedy.
On page 4, Lisa, probably about a third of the way down, it says Robert's Rules of Order is good, but in some cases they are designed for far larger bodies than the 7 people sitting up here.
I got it covered. I got something.
That's all I have.
Councilmember Richards, go ahead.
I've got a couple of things just from the last minutes. Okay, when I passed that newspaper clipping down the line, I was hoping that it would get to Lisa and that you would put it in the, or make note of it. Okay, I don't know if it got to you. I never got a chance to talk with you. Anyway, on page 8, okay, one correction. I've got to make it. Okay, at this top where it says council comments, Councilman Richards stated the improvement of the downtown building is being resurfaced. That is owned by Mr. Rowe has been great. He has spoken with the contractor and he was told that is the oldest building in the downtown. That is not correct, okay? It is the oldest building on the north side of Lake Street, Lake Street between Lafayette and Wells. It is not the oldest building in the downtown, but it says the oldest building on that side of the street. I think that's very important. Thank you, and that's it.
Councilmember Kivel.
On page 4, toward the bottom, it says, Tim and Matt, the next line down, it says know how they operate concludes the line. It says knows in the minutes. I've got one on 10. Oh, it was, I don't remember where it is on the paragraph. I'm afraid I don't see where it's at. It was the, oh yeah, okay. And it says 2-year anniversary for the fire, and it's actually fire theme at the end of that sentence, not fire thing. I know it's kind of inconsequential, but it should be right. That's all I had. Thank you.
Anything else for anything on the minutes?
I move the minutes as amended.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Approval of the bills.
I'll move the bills.
I'll support.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Approval of the attorney bills. Anyone?
Move the bills.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Approval of this evening's agenda.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. At this point in time, we welcome you to come up for public comment. If you wish to speak, please state your name and your address. Again, I'm going to go over the new rules very quickly since they've only been in place for a couple meetings. and you can find these on the back of the agenda. Members of the public may speak at the council meeting upon recognition of the mayor. Public comment may only occur during periods designated on the agenda for public comment or a public hearing. A person may speak for up to 2 minutes during each of the 2 public comment periods on the agenda items or non-agenda items. Waivers of the time requirement may only be granted in the discretion of the mayor, and waivers to speak at a time other than the designated comment period may only be granted by the council. Any person wishing to make a presentation longer than 2 minutes or requiring audio-visual equipment is asked to contact the city clerk requesting to appear on a future agenda. A person may only address council from the podium. Only one person may occupy the podium at a time. All remarks are to be directed to the mayor and council. Speakers are not to engage in direct dialogue with other meeting attendees. Any person who violates the rules of conduct, disturbs the peace at the meeting, and/or interferes with the meeting may be warned, ordered to be seated, removed, and/or ticketed. This summarizes Council Resolution 04-18. Complete rules, including the guidelines for considering waivers, are available on the City Council chambers and from the City Clerk. So thank you. All right, we'll close public comment and move on to the discussion of downtown. Mr. Donahue.
Hello there. Good to see everybody. Just a couple quick items. I have the report from Lloyd's overall report. Really kind of getting excited about the Heinen engineering item. As you know, he had his site plan approved, and he is making final arrangements, working with Cool Yule to put a 35 to 50 foot tree out in front. So it's going to be quite a spectacle. And that will, I think I might have mentioned this, that will coincide with, for the first time, we'll have all the white lights in the trees. The tree trunks will be red. And of course, the light poles will still be lit. So the lighting holiday spirit in our community will be significant. And then the rest of the Cool Yule Parade will actually have its same flow. What Mike is doing, the chair, is that he's going to have 2 pauses. There'll be a pause at the main 4 corners with the choir or the band. And then there'll be a pause at the tree. But it'll still end at the village. So it's going to be exciting. It's going to be really, really great. We'll have Brotoberfest tonight on the agenda with more details. The event chair is here. The yield signs, the pedestrian yield signs, will be downtown. That'll be exciting. We got approval from the Road Commission to put in white rectangles instead of the 2 white stripes. So we're going to unveil. We're going to use their contract. We get a much reduced price if we contract everything. I learned this through DPW. If we contract everything through the county, we'll get a lot cheaper. So we'll eventually do all the crosswalks except for the 4 corners with the large white rectangles. Until then, we have permission from the Road Commission to improve by our DPW staff the Whipple Street at North Lafayette Crossing because of the hotel. So that'll be coming in, and the new yield to pedestrian signs, the small ones like at the farmer's market, will be at our pedestrian crossings. And Lloyd and I are going to work on those locations. In August, you'll have the annual report, the second annual report on the economic development in the DDA, since we finished up our fiscal year, and I'm putting that together. I added, just for your information, just so you can kind of see, we're very proud of the Downtown Development Authority and the improvements they've made, how they operate, adopting the Main Street program. So I just wanted to give you their agenda, see what's on their agenda. And I know you could go to the website, but it's kind of nice to see. They're a very busy group doing great things. That's all I have.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah,
Yes.
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had 2 quick questions. The first one is regarding the tree. I'm having a lot of questions people are asking. And the question is this, because I say it's going to be a 30-foot tree, is this a real tree?
It's a live tree.
A live tree.
The site plan, I don't know if Carmen was part of that, but the site plan, the new plaza in front of the engineering, has an 8-foot deep steel tube that's about 2.5 feet wide. It has a cover on it normally, but that is where the tree will be dropped each year. It has guy wires.
What do you mean each year? It's not.
It's a temporary tree just brought in for the season.
That's what. Oh, it's not a real. That's going to stay there for.
It's a live. Well, I guess once you cut it, it's no longer live, but it's a real pine tree.
It's like
that will be there.
like what they do at the White House.
Correct.
A tree on the lawn or whatever.
Right. We will have the largest one in Oakland County, so we will be quite a spectacle.
Really?
Yes.
Excellent. The next question deals with the property that's for sale downtown, the corner property. And I don't have the history on this, I don't know, so I have been asked a couple questions on this. Is there any way you are working with developers that are considering tearing down that structure? Because what you have is a mismatch of bookends down there. You have 3 corners of the downtown that are brick and 2-story, and then you have that place.
Speaking of Draft Street, former
Yes.
Draft Street?
Yeah,
Yes.
Draft Street. So is there any hope that maybe we can get to matching bookends down there and get a brick building, 2-story, with the maybe lofts or whatever upstairs? Because it's such a mismatch, and you see all the work that's being done on the buildings in the downtown in terms of the historic revival, and then you have that building. That building just does not fit.
I agree totally. The ownership of the corner complicates it. There are environmental issues. There's a lot of confidential information I'm aware of with the current buyer and contamination issues that we could discuss. I think that the 2 current developers have talked about possibly demolishing it, possibly approaching the city to vacate the alley, possibly, this is all in the community's master plan. Possibly we sell or trade the current farmer's market lot. Of course, we have a future home for the farmer's market in the master plan down at the McKetty Park, right out at Pontiac Trail. So I think the 2 developers that are looking at it, we can't force the issues, but if they came to us for the alley or the parking lot, then fair game. We can negotiate to follow the master plan.
Well, hopefully they're listening to some of the council comments, and hopefully they're taking some of that into consideration. Because I find it very difficult that they're going to be able to do an exterior that is going to be compatible with what is going on in the downtown. They're going to be a misfit.
Yep.
And I just don't know if that is in the best interest of their marketing plan when they are clearly going to be a misfit if they don't do something and line it up more with the 3 corners that are already there.
I totally agree. That's where the DDA and myself are headed, is to follow the master plan and any type of incentive that we could offer, and there's a range, and we should consider all those. And those will come to council, all those. Anything from sell or trade the market, vacating the alley, commercial tax abatement. We have a program developed. We chose not to go there because we haven't established our threshold policy yet. But we can create a package that would be significant to induce a 2-story development there.
Well, maybe that's the path we should take. I don't know. I'm just saying, I think it's going to be very difficult for whoever buys that property to blend in with the trend that is going on. They will always be the misfit in that town unless they blend in.
And on the other hand, not to be the devil's advocate,
Sure.
but then there are property rights. There's only so much we can't force, but we can go right to that limit. I'm willing to. We can have Tim settle us down. But I'm willing to push the envelope to get the master plan followed.
I would support you on that 100%. And
Tim and Carmen will save.
I'll tell them right to their face. I don't know what you're going to do to the exterior of that building to blend it in with the architectural changes that are occurring in the downtown. Why would you waste your money? Why would you waste your money on coming
got the
in and
gist of
putting,
this.
and
Jeez.
putting a fresh coat of paint on that building and putting a new sign on it when you have a whole new downtown that's being built brand new, almost?
I know that both developers, at a minimum, before I talked about all the possible gambit of incentives, both developers noted they would strip it and totally tear the exterior off, down to the bones, if not totally demolish it. So we're getting there.
That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Councilmember Kibble?
All right, have you got a closer idea of when the color selection will be made for the Lake Street properties?
Just met with Richard Rowe today, and that'll be the week after next. We're going to meet with the painter,
Terrific.
and then we're going to coordinate with A&E Jeweler, the building owner,
Oh, good.
Mike Anderson, so they'll do those.
Will they be painting off of ladders or off of,
Ladders.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, the
When's that structure
that
going out?
monster platform leaves this week.
Oh, good. Okay. Terrific. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
We'll move on to old business number 1. Consider approval of first reading of ordinance rezoning parcel 21-19-126-002 Thomasville from RM1 multiple family residential to PD planned development.
Mr. Mayor,
Tim?
Council, you've all been provided with a, I guess maybe revised isn't the right word, but supplemental agenda note with a proposed motion and a draft ordinance rezoning this parcel from RM1 to PD, which is the recommendation, subject to conditions that came from your Planning Commission. Just wanted to make sure you were aware of the additional information.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. For those who don't know me, I'm Carmen Aventini. I'm the planning consultant for the city. I'd like to give, because we have some new members here, I'd like to give a little history on this project. Actually, this had gone through, it's a 2-step process with 2 steps in each step. It goes to Planning Commission and then to City Council for the rezoning. And at that time, you're basically locking into the general layout of the roads and the lots and the types of buildings generally. Then after the preliminary approval is granted, then it goes back to Planning Commission for the regular site plan review where we get into the details of landscaping and details on the buildings, any other improvements that there might be. Then it comes back to council again. So you're going to actually, after the rezoning portion of this, you would actually get another shot at the site plan, which is not typical for site plans, but because it's a planned development, that's what's happening here. Now, the history on this project is this project came through this council previously with smaller lots and smaller houses and was approved. It went through Planning Commission, was recommended to you, was approved, went back to Planning Commission for site plan, was recommended for approval, but didn't make it back to you. There was a change in ownership of the property, and what they would like to do now is the road layout is the same, the utilities are the same, the buffers from the property is the same. Everything's basically the same, except they wanted slightly larger lots and they wanted larger houses to go on there. And the applicant is here to explain all the market stuff. But they've dropped, I think it was about 10 units that they've dropped from the previous approval. But other than that, it's basically the same project. So that's the history of it, and that's why they came back through rather than coming for the final approval and going ahead with the previous plan. So if there's any questions I can answer about that project, I'll be happy to, but the real detailed stuff, the applicant is here to answer.
Okay. Councilmember Kennedy, please.
Carmen, I appreciate you going through some of the history on the development for those of us who weren't here. The concern I have going through this packet is some of the inconsistencies that are contained within this packet.
Okay.
Okay. So to begin, this is the packet that was provided from CIB Planning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. says we're going to construct 50 units. That's the target, right?
Yes.
50 units on this
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
Okay. It also says that over on page 3 that it could also improve access for the existing Colonial Acres development. I think we all know that ship sailed. Okay, you fought that battle 3 years ago, and they were pretty adamant in not wanting access granted through that development. So that should probably be updated. On page 4, it says that vehicular access to the property will be for 11 mile and meets the above criteria while improving accessibility for the existing Colonial Acres project. That's not true, because Colonial Acres isn't going to go into it. Sidewalks will also be provided within the project to be reviewed as part of the preliminary PD plan. Now, the sidewalks are described in about 2 or 3 different ways within this document. One is the sidewalk backs up to the curb. Another is the sidewalk has a 3-foot green space. Another is the sidewalk has a 2-foot green space. So I'm unsure which one it is. Secondly, it doesn't show sidewalks everywhere in that development. There's no sidewalk around the lower edge of the units 23 to 32. Anybody wanting to walk around that block walks out in the street to get around to the other side based on the drawings that we were provided. The other thing on page 5, it says the applicant is requesting 62 units. Yet, first page says 50. Okay. The overall density will be much lower than the previously approved 60 units. So the numbers aren't right. It was a cut and paste that didn't get edited properly, I'm guessing. Close to, and close to the 5 units per acre. Our waiver will be granted to allow a density of about 5.2. We talk about street trees. I'm concerned on where the street trees are going to be if the sidewalk butts up to the curb. I'm also concerned where the utilities are located, which are typically located in the right-of-way, so that if there's a problem, you dig up the grass portion of the right-of-way to do the repair. And now we're in one of these sections here, dated June 8th, I think it was, saying we're going to have sidewalk there. So where are the utilities actually going to be located in the development? It's not. I don't see that it's clear in here where that's going to be, because that's going to raise the cost of any repair in that development. The other thing in here is we talk about decreasing the setback for the back of the property to as low as 30 feet. Let me just share one of the comments that was made relative to the last time the council approved a planned development in an area called the Knolls, and some of the concerns that were expressed at that time. This goes back to 2013. I don't know if you represented the city during this one or not. At that time, Mr. Kivel stated that he spoke with Mr. Alco regarding the 25-foot setbacks for the front and 35 in the rear. Now, we're talking 30 to 5 foot less in this development than we had in the Knolls. He further stated, Mr. Alco said the plan will be changed using the correct setbacks required by the city. Mr. Kivel stated as long as that happens, he doesn't have an issue with the plan. But then he had a discussion regarding the size of decks and setbacks in the development and the problem that might cause in the future. Well, lo and behold, that's what's on our agenda tonight, is to deal with that problem, because the setbacks infringe on the ordinance requirements for construction of structures within that property. So by approving this, I'm assuming we'll be dealing with that same problem 2 or 3 years from now when the residents start moving in. Okay? Because the setback is so small. The lots are so small, and people are going to want to build decks and build patios. Some of the other concerns that were expressed regarding that planned development for the Knolls, which is very similar to the one for the Thomasville, discussion was held regarding the need for a second entrance for that subdivision. Chief Kennedy, who was the fire chief at the time, stated he would like to reaffirm the need for a second entrance. The emergency access, same thing we're proposing here, is the last worst option, according to Chief Kennedy. He further stated from a fire service perspective, a full access road is required. So again, I have on the 14th of June saying Mr. Cavaliers says there's going to be a 3-foot green belt. Later in this document saying it's going to be changed to 2, and then back on June 8th saying it's going to be up to the curb for the sidewalk location. So there's a lot of inconsistencies here and some errors in the material that was provided. In my opinion, I wouldn't vote to have it rezoned based on the inaccuracies contained in here until I get some additional clarification. I'd send it back and have the package cleaned up.
I've got some stuff.
Carmen, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could, hopefully I won't miss any along the way here. Because it's good that you brought those points up because I think there is some clarification needed. With regard to the road, you're correct, we did not, there's about an 8-foot gap from the property line to the Colonial Acres. And at this point in time, the folks in Colonial Acres don't want to make the connection. And we have no way of forcing them to do so. So what we do, which is what we do in other projects, is we have the road built up to the property line and put a barrier in there, and then we get an access easement. If at some point in time the folks in Colonial, could be 20 years from now, but if they change their mind, if there's some kind of major approval they need for a change in the development and they have to get site plan approval, there are different conditions under which there's the potential for that future connection. And short of getting it now, and the sole reason why the connection was recommended by both police and fire was, in particular fire, was to get quicker access to Colonial Acres. It wasn't for this project. There was no real benefit for this project to have that connection.
Other than the fire chief would recommend full-service accesses to that property.
Well, yeah, but I don't think that's what he meant when we were talking about it. He meant somewhere else on the property along the 11-mile road frontage. And after we went through the distance from that, we couldn't get it too close to the railroad track because of the wetlands and the pond. At that point in time, he said, all right, I get that I'm not going to get a full access down here, that it's not working for a number of reasons. And that's why he did agree to the access with the gate and the Knox box. But he also is making sure in the condominium documents that there are requirements in there that the condo association keep that free of snow in the wintertime. That was another
But the other point is too, this thing was zoned for 44 units as an RM1. Okay. Had it had 44 units, that emergency access road could have been widened because you could infringe on those 2 lots that border that temporary road.
Potentially. Of course, we would then have a lot more units too, and then
Pardon me?
we would have a lot more units if it were developed.
44.
No, but if it were RM1 like apartments, it would be a lot more units.
That's fine.
So.
Mr. Wilhelm?
Also, from understanding the background on this, the entire concept of doing the cross-access easement arose out of representations by the previous owner that they could and were willing to pursue such a cross-access easement. And when that fell through, this project faced some different hurdles when the ownership changed. And I don't know the details of the Colonial Acres side, but it's pretty clear they don't want to do that at this point. But the whole idea of connecting was largely based on that this property was designed to be part of Colonial Acres, and the ownership had made a representation that they would pursue that cross-access easement, which turned out not to be successful. So I don't know if there had been a clear, we are not doing that answer at the outset, that this project would have pursued that avenue.
Councilmember Kennedy?
Just for the benefit of those in the audience, having gone through driven through that area where Lexington, the potential connection would be with Lexington. It's not an actual road. It's in the middle of their parking lot in some of those areas. There's parking on both sides of that, and the houses are right there. This isn't a main thoroughfare like the other streets that we're connecting to off of Colonial Acres. So the fact that they don't want this connection is well understood. Okay, and it'll probably never happen, in most likelihood.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think that's not the issue in my point. It's simply that
that's not the issue, Tim. My issue is with the inconsistencies, the inattention to the detail in the packet, okay, The concerns that we have right now, we want to reduce the setback to 30 feet. We have properties that we're going to be dealing with tonight that are concerned about the fact they can't put a patio and deck in when we reduce the setback to 35 feet in another planned development. Are we just setting the stage for that to come back and bite us 3 years from now? That's my concern, because we're trying to cram 50 units into this piece of property on these size lots.
Tim, go ahead.
As to the rear setback issue, we're going to be dealing with that issue on the Knowles development later on tonight. We would certainly try and address that through the plan development agreement, the way it would have been. We're going to amend that agreement for the Knowles and address that issue up front, provided we can get the staff and the developer on the same page, and council as well, ultimately.
Mr. Mayor, while we're on that one, it's really apples and oranges, the two developments, because that development, the Knowles, was an open space development. So instead of people having the open space in their yards, it was common open space, which I think turned out very well. I think it turned out very nicely. And actually, the decks, the reason we need the amendment is not because they're going to extend farther into the rear yard than we had planned. It's the lot coverage requirements of the ordinance are extremely low right now. In fact, we're getting ready to propose to you to up those, because in many neighborhoods they're very difficult. Doesn't matter where you're at. And so what we're looking for is just to change we're not really changing the decks they can put in or how far they can go into the rear yard. We're just going to change the percentage of lot coverage, because when they drop down to the smaller lots and didn't include that as one of the waivers up front, it put them in conflict with the ordinance. So it's more of a clerical issue than it is a actual physical, are we creating a problem type issue. But this we have talked to the developer. We had a meeting less than a week ago and went through some of the details, and they will have to redo the buffering that they're proposing between these units and Colonial Acres properties. I'm not sure it won't be for the better, but they need to give themselves a little more space to put decks on the back, so we're not going to continuously see variance requests for those. So we are aware of that issue, and they do have to address that. And if I could jump to the sidewalks, which was exactly the comment we brought up at the Planning Commission, because the original plan did have a setback for the curb from the sidewalk, and I actually brought that up at the Planning Commission meeting, that we have to have some level of setback there for a number of different reasons, the least of which is to have some separation for safety purposes between the curb and the sidewalk. So the Planning Commission recommended a 2-foot setback from the curb to the sidewalk, and they do have to have sidewalks throughout the development.
Even though they're not shown right now on the drawing.
Yeah, there were some mix-up in the plans, because one of the copies we had was missing it too. So, but they will have to come in with a site plan that shows the sidewalks and shows them setback from the curb.
Councilmember Kennedy?
So again, you want an amendment, we're going to talk about an amendment for the Knowles. And maybe this is, we wait till we get to the discussion on the Knowles, why we would pursue that, as opposed to we have a zoning board of appeals and we have an appeal process for an ordinance, to exceed, if it exceeds the 25% lot coverage and you want to put in a patio and deck, there is a process to go through where you get the sign-offs of the neighboring lots, and you can get that approval. Why would we give carte blanche across the entire development? Especially when, if I go back to the comment that was made originally, Mr. Kivel at the time, Councilman Kivel at the time, said it would probably only affect 5 or 6 lots within that development. So I don't know why I would just automatically extend it across all the developments, and I certainly don't know why we would extend it across the city, if that's what you're advocating.
Yeah, well, actually, at that time, the issue was how far back into the setback would they go, and that's when we finally came up with an agreement as to how far, in the Knowles, how far the decks would come up. What we didn't talk about was what would happen to the lot coverage requirements, like we're seeing in other subdivisions. And what we don't want to do with the Zoning Board of Appeals is you don't send, where there's a commonality throughout a neighborhood, you don't send it to the Zoning Board of Appeals, because it's only supposed to be for very unique circumstances, really unusually shaped lots. In that particular case, that's what they're trying to avoid. They don't want to send every single person, every single homeowner to the zoning board of appeals, because then it would put them in an awkward position where they, have to approve all of these or potentially deny some of them. And frankly, none of them would meet the criteria. So
Well, again,
that's
I'm
why
just
we're doing
wondering
the plan
what Councilman
development.
Kimball said a few years back when he expected it was only going to affect a handful.
For setbacks. Yeah, for
For the
setbacks.
percent of coverage.
I don't remember.
No, that was
talking
for
about
setbacks.
For setbacks?
setbacks. Yeah. So, and once again, that was the reason we did that as a plan development, was because of utilizing the open space with the lots. That was.
If I could just make a quick comment on that, the ball being dropped on not recognizing that the lot coverage was going to be so universal across this whole thing, that's a huge oversight. So,
Well, and frankly, since that time, since that went through, we've seen a lot of similar requests throughout the city.
well, we
that
were
have
starting
gone
to
the
see it
zoning
in
board of
Sing.
appeals.
We started seeing it in Sing, and unfortunately, as a matter of timing, the economics of things, the Khaled or whoever had
Yeah.
taken control from Sing, and then it was re-rested by Sing to be controlling again. So they had a little lull in the action there. Had that been continuous and a little bit more vibrant economic development time, we would have identified this was going to end up being a universal problem a lot sooner. So we should have been able to have reflected on that when Knowles went in to see that this needed to be addressed. So we should have known this up front to be able to address that.
Well, we also, though, didn't have, we had some building elevations that showed what they were going to look like, but they were samples, but we really didn't know exactly how much of the footprint would be taken. So we're looking at footprints, and we didn't know how much of the footprint would be taken up, and they didn't know, because at that time they didn't even have their builder picked out. So now they came in with, and believe me, I went back and forth in the very beginning of this project on elevations with the builder to say you're not close enough to what was approved by City Council. So when they finally did come up with what we had all agreed upon, that was relatively close, then they started coming in, and the buildings were frankly a little bigger and filled up the envelope, and that's why we have the situation that we're having. Is it bad that there are bigger houses in there? Not necessarily, but we had no way of knowing when we first reviewed the plans, because we're looking at building envelopes. So now we know what they're getting. So,
But it could have changed the calculus of people's position on the approvals. So knowing what we were going to be up against, would we accept the idea of this, especially the notion that this is going to be relegated solely to this development? Steve gets crazy about this, but I'm thinking if we're looking at trying to amend overall coverage kind of a thing, I would like it done on an across the community basis,
Yep.
as opposed to this, and I would like it to be very tightly stipulated what types of activities of building, or coverage, I should say, would be provided to, or permissible.
Mm-hmm.
So, not putting a two-story shed or something in the back, if it's, I just heard about somebody losing the ability to put a 12-foot pool in their backyard because they were already at, that would broach the 25% coverage. Well, that's silly, and this is in an old neighborhood.
Yeah.
So,
yes. No, if I can, Mayor, you're absolutely correct, and that's why we've talked within the past week about, instead of waiting for the whole zoning ordinance to come forward, we're going to come forward with zoning amendments for the lot coverage ahead of time, because we're just seeing a lot of these types of requests where folks are proposing reasonable type changes, whether it be a pool or a deck or whatever, and with their house they're either already at the maximum percentage or they're pretty darn close. And when you look at the lot and what they're proposing, it's not like they're doing something horrible. So we're going to come in with, we've looked across the board, we've looked at the lots in the city, we've looked at the zoning districts as part of the zoning ordinance update, and we are ready to propose some changes in the lot coverage requirements. It's not going to negatively impact these lots. It's not going to negatively impact the city. It's just going to give people the same type of reasonable use of their lots that they would have in any other community. So we're fixing that, because the numbers are very low in the ordinance right now. They're pretty low, the lot coverage, with what's included in the lot coverage calculation. So you're absolutely right, and we are going to deal with that, elsewhere too.
Councilmember Richards has been very patient, and then I'll come down to you. Councilmember Kurtzwell, go ahead.
Well, Carmine, I know you've probably done a lot of work on this, okay? But the whole concept of the project is still trying to put 30 pounds of potatoes in a 15-pound sack on the whole property. Now, giving you the benefit of the doubt, I don't see it. I read every bit of this. I don't see where HRC has put in anything on this new creation of this. And I'm asking you, what, to the best of your knowledge, have they reviewed this modified proposal that we've been presented with from the one from 2 years ago, which went down in flames? Okay. Has HRC put in anything?
Yeah, it's my understanding that they did. And the only real changes there would be to this plan from the original one is that there would be less leads into the houses. But other than that, the system is the same.
Well, I don't know. There's no point in... This whole thing is, Colonial Acres will never go along with this. They'll go to court and fight this, in my opinion. They're totally... This would be a catastrophic disaster as far as they're concerned, because it disrupts the continuity of their concept of their living style, okay, in Colonial Acres. There's going to be children in this place, okay? Small kids, maybe 2 to a unit or family, but it's going to add up to hundreds, okay? And
Be careful.
that's what in Colonial Acres, they don't want that, okay? It's going to be rampaging through their streets, okay? With their toys and skateboards, and the teenagers are going to be walking around like zombies with,
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
cell phones and
Councilmember Richards,
skateboards.
please get back on topic.
Okay, all right, I'm just saying, I hope you can come to an agreement, okay, and review this, and give me a chance to give you some input, okay? Just like I offered my services and my help to the HRC guy that was here that time, as I recall, okay, but they never bothered contacting me. If you want to make a development out of this and make it go, and the whole council will love it, okay? Okay. I'm willing to give you some input, and that's all I can do, I guess. Thank you.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that a point of order is a move that is done under Robert's Rules, in which you need to be recognized by the mayor in order to make the point of order.
Mr. Mayor, point of order again.
Thank you.
Point of order again.
Excuse me.
Point of order again.
Okay, you're out of order, but I've been
Councilmember
recognized.
Friesen, what is your point of order?
So my point of order is to request that council keep its comments germane to the issue that is before, which is only the first reading of the ordinance, and it really has nothing to do with Knowles of South Lyon at this point. And if someone has a motion and they're ready to move, I think we're probably done with debate.
Is anyone?
Discussion.
Councilmember Kennedy?
I just want to share some other information that was presented regarding the Thomasville property on the City Council meeting on November 23rd, wherein, first off, with a 10-foot setback between the buildings, okay, the houses on this property, this development has the potential to look like the development that sits across from Sam's Warehouse on Wixom Road. Okay, 2-story buildings, 10-foot separation between them on the west side of Wixom Road. It'll be that tight, potentially that tight. The comment that was made during this meeting is that Councilmember Kivel stated that with a 5-foot minimum, it basically means a house could only be 10 foot away from another house as opposed to 12 feet. Also, Councilmember Didakis, Councilmember Parisian, stated she shares the concerns regarding the density. And then Councilman Kivel went on to say that he stated he understands the residents will have a small yard. But because there are other developments that are having tighter setbacks, doesn't mean South Lyon needs to follow along.
Councilmember Kivel, go ahead.
My earlier comments were just kind of a piggyback on what Steve was leading to. I have a number of concerns about this whole project. The idea that we're going to turn a blind eye to the fact that the lot area is literally 48% of the requirement of that open space option for R3. You give me a look as though that's news to you. I mean, 8750 to 42,000 or 4,200 square feet, that's bizarre. The lot width is 83% of what the requirement should be. The density is 140% of what that should support, and the side yard is 94%. And that was actually before I was thinking 5 to 5. So that was when it was going to be 5 on one side, 10 on the other, which is the more typical scenario. Now he's talking about 5 foot on either side of a lot. So you're having literally 10-foot setbacks on side yard setbacks at each house.
That's a sardine can.
I'm just not tracking that. And the notion that we would end up establishing the property line at the back of the curb is bizarre to me. If you're going to have a 25-foot setback, the only way they can accomplish that from the information they've provided is the property line is at the curb. They've got, the house is, the front of the garage is 18 foot from the 5-foot sidewalk. So the sidewalk goes to the curb. So I'm just thinking, that's bizarre to me. Is this development going to be likely to submit for us having dedication to the streets and the water sewer utilities?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think you're getting to the point where you might want to ask the applicant some of these questions.
That would be fine, if you'd like to come up.
Yeah.
Councilmember Parisian?
So don't be scared, we just ripped it
Oh,
apart.
wait a second, I'm not done talking.
No, I know. No, I'm
Okay.
sorry. I thought I heard her say Mr. Mayor.
Oh.
Come on.
No, Glenn, I would allow you take over the questions. Sir, did you hear the question that he was asking?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Lorenzo Cavalier, 30078 Shaner Road, Warren, Michigan. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yes, okay, so at the last iteration, it sounds as though the proposal was to put the sidewalk at the back of the curb. So you're talking about essentially that would be the property line?
No, what was discussed and agreed to with planning was that there'd be a 2-foot buffer between the back of the curb and the walk, and as opposed to the walks being adjacent to back of curb.
Okay, because there's 3 iterations that are spoken to in the email exchanges, and we're not certain which one you're actually proposing. So
For the record, 2-foot buffer between back of curb and walk, and a 5-foot walk.
Okay, so that does actually literally put the property line at the back of the curb, because you have a 5-foot sidewalk, 2-foot green belt, and the 18-foot that's pitched in the documents gives you that 25-foot. So that means that your setback is literally at the back of the curb property line. Is that accurate?
The setbacks from sidewalk to garage in most cases are
Well, that
20
is
foot,
typical.
20 foot or greater. Some are a couple of feet shorter.
Most typical is 1 foot property, the house side of the sidewalk is typical for the property line to be. That gives utilities a nice easement to be able to run without, you put a curb stop there, and that's everything from the curb stop back is the property owners.
Right.
So I'm not seeing the ability for us to have that take place under the circumstances that you're pitching. The idea that you could actually have cars in the driveway that aren't going to breach the sidewalk, so that mom pushing a stroller with their child won't end up having to dive into the approach of the driveway to be able to get, the other side of the driveway. where are the utilities likely to end up being located? Under the street or under the front yard of people's homes?
The utilities, whether they're water, sewer, or sanitary or storm, or power and gas, that's all going to be regulated and decided by the city engineer and by the utility companies, and we're going to be subject to their regulations. So as far as where the utilities are located, that's something that needs to be approved by a different body, I think. I don't.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me ask you then, is your long-term expectation is that you'll dedicate the roads and the water sewer utilities to the city?
The public water main and sanitary sewer, I think, is actually a requirement that it is dedicated.
Well, if this is a private development.
It's not, right, even if it's a private development, I don't think it's a choice.
No, we have a choice, yeah. We've taken dedication of them.
The road for public water and sewer, there's a permit that's required by the state of Michigan, and also required by the city engineers.
Right.
And provided that we meet their standards.
Correct.
For design and installation.
But we don't automatically accept responsibility from them. That we only do that by dedicating. You comply with what our expectations are, and then we can have them dedicated to this.
Precisely. So if we meet the design standards, then there's a process that's already in place that I don't dictate. I myself don't dictate. If we meet the design standards, and they're obviously.
No, that's not accurate, because we have to get dedicated easements to be able to accept those utilities.
And those easements are also part of the requirement for design standards. So, I guess, are you saying that if we meet the design standard, if the water and sewer requirements are built and designed and built to the city and the county standards, is there an issue?
With the appropriate easements, and that will end up determining whether or not we'll be able to accept them. I guess my concern is, okay, if you put the utilities, if it's engineered to have the utilities under the road, I'm not going to approve us accepting the responsibility of having to cut the road open every time that we have a water main problem. If they're in the front yards and people end up putting their landscaping package in there, and we have to dig in their yard and then make their landscaping package whole at the conclusion of a repair job. I'm not very comfortable with the notion of that either. So that's sort of part of where my concerns lie.
And I'm not here, with all due respect, to ask questions. I'm here to answer questions. But if there are certain design standards that are programmatic for the development of property, and our design meets those standards, I don't know that does it become a one-on-one discussion with anybody? If there are standards and we meet them.
We're not obligated to accept those to be dedicated to the city.
And I'm not here to question whether you are or you're not. I'm just saying that this project will be designed from a utility standpoint specifically to the design standards of the city engineers. They're very specific design standards, and where applicable, to the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, as well as Oakland County, whether it's the Road Commission or the Drain Office.
Okay, could you tell me, is your expectation that it'll be a mountable curb on the curbs, or will they be a waterfall? Do you have a sense of that at all? the regular, typical, traditional curb?
No, it will not be a waterfall curb. It will be
Mountable, okay.
And that's also a design standard. That curb design, that road design, is a design standard that we have to abide by as a developer. We don't get to choose what that curb design is.
I'm surprised that you don't have the ability to request a particular type of package, so.
We are not allowed as developers to choose what curb design. There may be multiple curb designs that we can select, but we need to meet the design standards that are set in place.
Okay. Do you have any kind of an address to all these waivers that are necessary to be able to be in compliance with your objective to have that many houses in this program? I mean, when you're pitting this against the open space preservation option, the notion that these yards aren't going to end up being, I thought when I started reading the information that was related to this whole thing, that the open space was going to end up being some way to extend between abutting backyards, so that it might end up giving a sense that there's a larger backyard, but they would only have control over some level of depth on it, and then the rest of it would be common space. That's certainly not the case. You're woefully insufficient on space of every single lot in that. I mean, if it averages 4,200 square feet, that's not even close to our lowest residential standard. So,
okay. For one, the actual current zoning of the site allows for multifamily.
Which has a density of R3.
In the first reading in front of council, and I know that maybe not everybody who's here now was present at that time, but there were 60 40-foot wide lots that was approved by planning twice and by council once, and we eliminated 10 lots, increased them to 50 footers, and now we're back in front for a new approval. What's being proposed and what's allowed by your current ordinance for this property with this current zoning, the density is considerably less than what is actually allowed under the current zoning. So the rear yard,
I think you're right. I don't think
the
that
backyard
means
space
anything.
could be a lot less per the current zoning ordinance of the city for this particular parcel.
I agree. I think that there's probably some wiggle room there, but that would, for my vote, that would just make it less likely to end up for me to approve it than where you're sitting right now. So the concern that had been brought up about the continuation of Lexington Road, we've got a number of developments that have one entrance into it. So I really don't see that as being a deal breaker, but there's all kinds of other hurdles here that I simply can't support this thing for.
Well, there are two entrances.
No, I recognize that, but I mean there
was
one
entrance. What do you?
One that's available 24/7.
No, I'm saying that other developments in the community have one entrance, and people are completely satisfied that you can get in and out.
There can be two entrances available 24/7. We don't have to put.
I get that.
The drawing shows the second entrance is a lockable entrance,
Right.
emergency.
Right, but it
No,
does
my
not
point
have to
was-
be. It can be. That can be open.
Let me just have the conversation with you, please.
Sure.
The extension of Lexington from Colonial Acres behind you, that was the part that was the bone of contention that I was referring to. That one is kind of a non-issue to me because we have other developments that have a single entrance and they're very safe and patrolled properly and things. So I don't see that as an obstacle. Unfortunately, there's at least 5 of the 6 items that are non-starters for me. So, but thank you very much. I appreciate your answering my questions.
Thank you.
Councilmember Parisian, and then I'd like to interject and try and bring this thing back inside here. Go ahead.
Actually, I'm going to pass,
You're
just
gonna
for
pass?
the sake of
Okay.
time.
I'm going to suggest that if you're going to want this council to be able to digest this plan, that it comes back a little bit cleaner, because several of the members up here have brought up good questions, and we need time to go over these facts clearly before we get into a meeting concept. We're not here to make these decisions on site. So that would be my suggestion. I don't know what anyone else thinks about this game plan. But if we can maybe get a motion, I would entertain a motion that we get this plan cleaned up and we would have you back. And I understand your time is valuable. A lot of everyone's is. But I think everyone needs some time to digest this plan in a clean fashion. And then we can come back and hopefully we'll have some more direct questions for you that would be able to move this along in a faster pace. Okay? Does anyone have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we postpone review and vote on this zoning ordinance till the, how long do you think it's going to take
Yeah, how long?
to clean up the things that have been discussed, make things a little bit clearer, provide drawings that are actually accurate if we're saying that the sidewalks exist that don't show on the drawing, et cetera?
We could submit, what's the requirement for your
So-
meeting a week before?
As long as you could have it our agendas are set on Thursday, and I don't want to speak out of line. Lisa, when would you like that information to get that on the agenda?
Well, we put the packet together on Thursday, so
Right.
Wednesday would be.
Okay, so,
Mr.
What?
Mayor,
yes,
let's go for the second meeting in August.
would that be all right? Do you feel like that's enough time for you? Second meeting of August?
When is the next council meeting?
It'd be 2 weeks from this evening.
Okay, so if we were to submit by the Wednesday,
Before,
8 days before,
right.
right?
Yep. Or no, sorry, 5. It'd be Sunday, Saturday,
sorry.
Friday,
Correct.
Thursday, Wednesday, 5 days.
Okay, so the Wednesday before.
Right.
Would that be,
Let's go for the third
So we-
of August.
Councilmember Kennedy suggests that we go for the August 13th meeting. It'll be the first meeting in August.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember
It
Friesen?
sounds as though Mr. Cavallari, is that it?
Yes.
Wants to come back the next meeting in July.
If you think you
Is
can have
that
it
what I'm
ready.
hearing? Mr. Cavallari, is that what you'd like to do?
that's correct.
But-
So long as we could submit within the required timeframe. Is there any reason?
Well, we're giving you the option to come back in a month, more than a month. Or if you wish to come back sooner than that, it's up to the council. However, I want to make sure you have adequate time to get everything you need together.
Our preference would be to come back as soon as possible, and we could meet the submittal requirement to be on the next council meeting, without question.
Okay.
Dan,
Councilmember Kibble?
if I could just make sure you understand, it'd be really helpful to remove the ambiguity of what's in the documents. I mean, give us a clean copy of what your intentions are. Try to take the mystery out of trying to figure out through all these disjointed emails and things what exactly is being proposed, okay?
No question, I completely
All right,
understand.
thank you.
And I would make sure that would happen so that we could be on the next council meeting.
I have no problem with that.
I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
You good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We still need a motion.
I think there's a motion on the floor.
Due to personal circumstances, I'm going to make the motion that we postpone this to August 13th so that I have adequate time to go through the revised package, since I spent an inordinate amount of time going through this package. I'd like the same opportunity for the next one.
I think that's
Coming
fair.
back to the next meeting, I wouldn't be afforded that opportunity.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
Motion passes. Thank you, sir. New business number 1, consider approval of Brotoberfest and road closures. Mr. Donahue.
All right, I'll start, and I'm going to introduce our committee chair. You have the agenda note in front of you. Brotoberfest is a DDA event proposed for Saturday, October 20th, 4 to 9 p.m. It's intended to be a men and ladies' night out, co-marketed with Ladies' Night Out to be held on November 16th. East Lake Street closure is requested from noon to 10 p.m. for setup and takedown, Saturday, October 20th. Again, on East Lafayette, on East Lake between Lafayette and Wells Street. At the May 10th DDA board meeting, the DDA voted unanimously to hold this first annual Brotoberfest and to recommend approval by City Council. I would like to introduce the chairman of the committee, Joe Burchell. And any questions you have? Come on up, Joe.
Hi, Joe.
Good evening, Your Honor. Good evening, council members. My name is Joe Burchell. I am a resident of the city of South Lyon. I reside at 213 Oak Brook Drive, Unit 5.
Councilmember Parisian, you had something for Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Joel, welcome, and thank you, Bob, for your work on this. I have a couple questions. So a while back, I want to say this was maybe 2 or 3 meetings ago when Bob had first brought to council's attention Brotoberfest. You had mentioned there was an issue with copyright, or was it licensing? It was in someone's name when it should have been an employee's name. Did we sort that out?
Yes. We, Lloyd brought that up,
Okay.
and we solved that it has been transferred into my name as an employee of the city.
I just want to be clear and make sure.
Yes.
Okay, so it's now in your name.
And that was in regards to the website
Right.
address.
Joe, out of the kindness of his heart, secured the domain name, but he's not technically part of the city.
Technicalities, semantics.
Lloyd had the correct answer, and we fixed that.
Okay, great. That's my first question. Thank you. It's an excellent way to be diligent on that. And my other question is this the first of its kind? I've never heard of Brotoberfest before. Is another community doing this, or are we the first?
I'm sure other communities may have done men's nights out if they have done ladies' nights out. My question to Bob several months ago was, we do, and this all started because I had a few suggestions for the Cool Yule Parade.
Cool.
So you can see where it went from there.
Spiraling.
In the rabbit hole.
I had asked him, I was drinking heavily one morning at the corner cafe, and I said, Bob, there's a ladies' night out. Why isn't there a men's night out? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, something like this. And I came up with a few ideas, and I must have missed the meeting where he named me chairperson. This is just something to be a little different. The purpose is to spotlight and promote the businesses of downtown South Lyon, which is what the DDA does. Mm-hmm. Secondly, we want to promote the city of South Lyon. Now, it didn't need that before I came along. We seem to be growing at a great rate. And to add another memorable event to draw residents and others to downtown South Lyon. We want to be a go-to spot. Just sort of lean towards activities for the men and their ladies if they'd like to participate. We are not going to discriminate at all. The subtitle to an evening out for the men of South Lyon and their ladies with appropriate activities for each is Men Stop in the male play area while the women shop. I ran this by several of the key downtown businesses. They said, yes, any sort of activity where you bring people downtown is great for us. We love it. We love the business we get. This sounds fun. Brotoberfest, I came up with it. I don't know. It's the coffee that did it, I think. It was going to be October because we had a gap there for a significant event that would promote shopping downtown. And I thought, well, Oktoberfest, guys, Brotoberfest.
Excellent. Very cool.
That's where that came from. So some people think it's silly, some people think it's great. It's for marketing.
It's
it doesn't
fitting.
matter. It will work. People will
Perfect.
remember it.
So, kind of in line with along that same vein with the bros, I ran this past my husband, and I told him, hey, would you attend this? What would you like to see? I don't know, what do dudes like to do?
Thank you.
And he had mentioned to me, he actually brought up a good point. In Detroit, a lot of businesses downtown have cornhole out because it's summertime and there's different games and Jenga and other things out and about in front of businesses. And because there's a lot of stores that are kind of female-oriented, my husband's like, I probably wouldn't go in there, but if you were in there shopping, I would just go play cornhole and I would make some friends and I would do X, Y, and Z. So I was thinking, well, he was actually the one who came up with this idea, but if the females are shopping and there's a play area for the men, that might not be a bad idea for thoughts, ideas,
Thank
cornhole,
you for volunteering
team
to
and
be
Jenga.
on the activity committee. I'm grateful. We actually have spoken to several people about that. We are going to, with DDA funds, buy a couple sets of that to put it out in the play area. One of the suggestions we had for KB Sports was to ask them to consider some sort of, forgive the analogy, but the little Chuck E. Cheese shoot the basket,
Yeah.
the small basketball, and, you know, if
Disc
they
golf.
do it,
You could do
mini golf,
cornhole.
something like
Yeah.
that. There's going to be lots of things. This is the first time out.
Yes.
We want to have a manageable event that will grow. We don't want to have a grand event that will be poorly attended. We'd rather go the other way. But we do want things, I mean, we talked about talking to one of the local collision companies, bringing something downtown with the engine out, so gas tank out, glass out, where somebody would pay $5 per sledgehammer sling with appropriate safety gear that would go to a charitable event. But again, that's the second or third one, pending approval of the first, hint, hint. So we want to see this grow. We're going to bring street food in. We're going to have the pizza truck there. We want to get some sort of group to come in and do actual brats a la Oktoberfest kind of celebration. We're talking about a beer tent with the VFW taking care of that. George at KB Sports says he's got a big rear screen projection TV he's going to put in his front window. There's going to be no sound, but he'll have some game, so people at the tables out in the front dining and drinking enclosure or perimeter would be able to enjoy the game.
One more question.
Yes.
So the last ladies' night out, there was gift bags for the ladies, and they could, lotion and candles and coupons, etc. For the gentlemen, we can maybe tap into our patrons and see who has football tickets, who has whatever, B-dubs.
We're talking about things like that. We would naturally like...
I don't know what guys like. I don't know.
Give us a pretzel and we're good.
We'd naturally like to have some
I'm trying to do you a favor. Sorry, go ahead.
We'd naturally like to have some sort of takeaway for the men. We've discussed several things, one of which would be to get one of the first Brotoberfest pins, if you're one of the first couple hundred to show up. Sorry, ladies, men only for that. Some sort of swag bag, but we'd have to have the right vendors to supply that. Now, naturally, if the businesses would like to supply their own to people who walk in, that being a requirement to get that particular gift item, by all means, because we want people to go in to the businesses.
Do they know that?
What?
The businesses?
We don't want to go soliciting something for an event that hasn't been approved yet.
True. Touche. I'll give that to you.
When we did our field study, the businesses said, we're interested, we want to participate, tell us what you'd like us to do.
There's so many patrons out there, I think, that would really support this, and that would really bolster what would be in those gag bags or what to put out in front of businesses. Go ahead. Sorry, Ron.
It's not a men's only night.
Right, I
It's
know.
really, it's a sneaky way to have another ladies' night out, but have the men welcome, and it's a co-ed thing, but it's tagged as this.
It's pretty cool.
It's for men and their ladies.
Well, thank you, both of you, for all that you're doing with this. Very cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Walton? Oh, Councilmember
She
Kurtzwell.
first. Or you can go first. Oh, I just have a quick change under the recommendations center section. It says approve the Brotober event, and that should be Brotoberfest. If we could fix that. And also in the games area, it says corn toss, soft horseshoes, and Nerf basketball, etc. Is the corn toss the cornhole game that
Yes.
Mary was referring to?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Joe, I just wanted to say I'm so excited that you're putting this program together. I need to find events for my husband to go to, so this is just absolutely great.
It's not a babysitting event. Ma'am.
Yeah, okay.
The ladies don't have to come
Okay,
downtown.
well,
They can
I think
sit at
this
home
is-
with the remote
this
if
is-
they want.
This is fabulous, and I have a subdivision of guys that I am just going to, probably be your best marketer for this, because I think this is just a great opportunity. I want to thank you for stepping forward. I want to thank you for all the time you're putting into this. And I just want to thank you for your enthusiasm. It's wonderful. Working with Bob is very easy because he's such a great guy to work with. And so between the two of you, I'm sure this is going to turn out to be a great event. The only thing I'm going to say is that you're in the middle of football season. And I don't know who's playing where, but maybe if we had a TV out there or something, but maybe you don't want that, so.
In KV Sports, the TV is going to face outward. So people sitting in the closed section of East Lake can watch the game. In fact, I think that, George was talking about a couple of.
I just saw George, who's really a team player, pun intended. He wants to have the large rear screen, but he's going to have 2 or 3 other TVs. All of his windows will have TVs so that you can watch multiple college games. The second round of college games come on at 4 o'clock,
Yeah.
so there'll be and Joe looked at with the high schools, and on a Friday night's a deal killer because people are at the game.
We would have died.
So yeah, but there'll be a lot of teams.
Well, here's a question that I've seen in other cities. The streets are going to be closed, right?
The one street
The one street.
or one block.
And it's my understanding that you can only drink in the beer tent?
The designated enclosure.
A controlled area.
Would there,
controlled area.
could you have a designated area in front of the football
Yes, if you look at
TVs?
your map, you'll see that we positioned it in front of KV Sports.
Perfect.
Lloyd suggested these color-coded areas, similar to what Witches Hat does. So at Lloyd's, so we put that enclosure. Depending on sponsorship, we could tent that area. But at a minimum, we're going to have the service tent in green, then either an open enclosure in orange or a tented enclosure in orange. But the serving area will stay the same, 115 by 28.
Okay.
So they will be in a position to see any or all of the televisions very well.
That's fabulous.
Might want to mention the Lyon Theater
The Lyon Theater?
connection.
Oh, which the fact that they were going to have short films, so we wouldn't have. I had thought John Wayne films, but I thought 90 minutes in a theater is going to take people away from my event.
Yeah.
So what we want is short films. So they talked about having Three Stooges, which I think for a bunch of grown baby, young men out, that would be perfect.
Well, thank you so much for being part of the team, I'll tell you.
Welcome, thank you.
Yeah, this is exciting. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, we hope to see you there.
Oh, you will.
Okay, Dan, I just have one
Yep,
question.
Councilmember Kivel, go ahead.
The drawing that we've got shows a through lane for westbound traffic.
Emergency traffic.
Okay.
That will be closed to regular traffic, but
Okay,
should
I
an
thought that
emergency
seemed
arise,
a
we'll
little
be able to
risky.
move the barricades out of the
Okay.
way and let police and fire go down as
All
needed
right, thank you.
for a small fee.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
I move to approve the Brotoberfest event requested from the DDA. It's recommended by the DDA and Econ, the Economic Development DDA Director, for Saturday, October 20th, 2018, from 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock p.m.
Mr. Mayor.
with the VFW Post 1224 operating a beer and wine tent and enclosure with an MLCC license on East Lake Street and the closure of East Lake Street between Lafayette and Wells Street as approved for Saturday, October 20th, from noon to 10 o'clock p.m.
As approved by the
Hang on,
police chief.
one moment.
Yeah.
Councilmember Parisian, you had something?
I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. Are we going to be receiving a certificate of insurance, or liability insurance, closer to? Okay, just want to make sure it wasn't in the packet, didn't miss it. Okay, sure.
The VFW has to provide I don't want to speak out of order, Lloyd. That information along with the MLCC certificate?
Right, they will need, and they may already have the insurance. It would simply be using their existing insurance, but they would have to submit the paperwork to get the special license to be able to have the beer tent and the enclosure.
Excellent. Okay, I just wanted to
area.
make sure all that's taken care of, especially if it was in the packet and I didn't see it.
And,
so.
and normally the event itself, if it's sponsored by the DDA, we have not required separate event insurance because the DDA is part of the city, and I believe they use our insurance.
So it's under the umbrella. One more quick question. Are we getting a banner for this?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Could the motion be amended to be contingent on approval of, or supply of the
Received insurance.
needed insurances?
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
You can make that amendment. I mean, that's an amendment to my motion.
Make the amendment that this passes pending receipt of certificate of insurance.
Second. You got to approve the amendment first.
I'll second the First Amendment.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Now to the motion.
And Councilmember Walton?
Second the original motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thank you all
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Joe.
Thank you.
New business number 2, consider approval of First Amendment to Knolls of South Lyon Plan Development Agreement. Carmine, take the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've actually talked about this quite a bit already, and I think I've explained the dilemma that they're running into, and rather than have every single home owner in there go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a lot coverage, not setback, but lot coverage variance, that it'd be better to amend the plan unit development agreement so that they can meet what would be a reasonable deck size. They still do not get to increase the setbacks. They would just comply with the lot coverage requirements of the PD agreement. And frankly, with the new ordinance amendments, we're going to be recommending something that's pretty close to this anyway. I think just 5% less, but this is an open space community, so.
Okay. Councilmember Kivel, you had something?
Yeah. We shouldn't be inventing anything. Clearly, this has been conducted someplace else. I would love to see documents that represent other communities and their approach to this whole thing, where there's some actual metrics and it's a logical progression of amendments rather than us just kind of throwing an arbitrary number, or what seems to be arbitrary. What was driving the 40% for this one, as opposed to just the incremental increase that would have allowed 90% or 80% of people to be able to address this issue?
Well, with this number, we should have no variance requests. They should all be able to, unless there was something related to steep topography or something else that was unusual. And we did look at this hard because we didn't want to create issues, especially since we're going to be coming forward with new zoning amendments to change the lot coverages for all the lots throughout the city.
Well, my point being that I don't want us to just approve some arbitrary kind of language. That I'm not going to approve it. So I want this thing to be methodical and a study, not just let's throw some numbers out and see if we can get that through. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could also, I think if you took all of the open space and allocated it to each of the lots as you would with a normal development, and then you gave them the ability to put on the types of decks that they're talking about, that they would be in compliance with the ordinance. But that was the trade-off. We wanted more open space. We preserved more natural features, created a more unique development. By doing that, we just run into a situation where they really can't, I mean, even just extending the percentage, which we anticipated all along, no more than the 25% into the rear yard, they just, I mean, some of them are already at the 25% lot coverage, so they can't have a deck or anything else. So I think we did look at it hard. In fact, I know Kelly's, I told her, I said, look, make sure you look at this really hard, because she's been the one working with Patrick and Megan before Patrick on all of the lot coverage variance requests that we're seeing. It's really become a big issue, which is why we want to move the ordinance amendments forward.
I guess
So-
my concern is if people in that market had been aware that this was going to be a complication for them down the road, as if this board had understood this was likely to end up being a complication down the road, they might have had a different view of whether or not this PD was or open space was the right selection to have been made. So, you know.
No.
Councilmember Richards?
Carmine, I view this as potentially having a domino effect on the rest of the community, okay? This can be one step down a slippery slope, okay? And everybody else will say, gee whiz, they got 25 feet more. Why don't we try for the same thing? And they'll be flooded with our building department will be flooded with applications for 25-foot additions. I can't imagine, you know, why. If they got a deck already, and they've got a patio, and they've got an amenity that suits their lifestyle, why they want a little bit more, okay? I just don't understand that. Okay.
One moment. Carmine, maybe I'm speaking out of line here, but this appears to be something that you guys are going to address community-wide. This percentage is strictly just for the Knolls, correct?
Correct, and it is a planned development. As part of a planned development, it gives you the ability to treat things differently because, like the subdivision next to it is not an open space subdivision. They don't have the open spaces and the pathways and so forth that this one has.
Okay.
So
And
it is different.
Right, and you're saying that this is a problem throughout the community, and it is being addressed right now at looking at a more thorough number of percentage of the lots then?
Yeah, so what happened here, I mean, we do have an issue citywide with the lot coverage percentages, and it's more specific to some subdivisions and others. But what we're seeing here is that when we did the plan development, and for those who are involved, we put a lot of time and effort, and we tore the plans apart, and we looked at absolutely everything. We just didn't know what the ultimate home sizes would be. Right. So it's not that we didn't I think we all did a great job in this project. I think it's turned out very nice. But what happens now is we're overlaying a different type of plan development project into the lot coverage requirements of our ordinance, and they don't match. Okay, and in hindsight, it's 2020. Had we known that the houses were going to, be maxing out the envelopes, of course we would have put this in the development agreement, and it would have been this number. So I don't think that anybody missed it or we fell down on it or whatever. I thought we were all very thorough on this project. Sometimes it's like zoning. Sometimes you start working with something and you find out that it isn't. You got to tweak it. You have to work with it a little bit.
Councilmember Richards, I want to offer the floor back to you because I cut you off there, and I just wanted to clarify where the avenue you were going down. So if you still have a question, please go.
Well, it's my understanding from the way I read this, okay, that you're making an amendment to apply Section 1, Phase 1 of the Knolls, okay, and also Phase 2, to include Phase 2.
Yes.
But now that Phase 2 isn't even built yet. It isn't, there's some preparations, but they're a long ways from the 80% occupancy. Okay. And it appears that there's no work going on the last 3 weeks, okay, other than small subcontractor work. So why do they, they got those are nice houses, they got nice backyards. Okay, maybe they're not an acre or something, but they are nice, okay. What's wrong with the decks that they've got now? Okay, just because they want to expand them a little bit more? Is that what motivated this whole thing? Or who came up with the idea to ask for a little more room on the decks and patios?
Carmine.
Mr. Mayor, I don't mean to speak for the developer who is here, and I'll let him answer, but what we're hearing from the builder is that the new houses that have been built, that the folks want to come in and put decks on, that they don't have them yet. And if they do, they're already like at the 25%. And if they put the decks in and meet still the same setbacks, that they're going to go over. So they can't get a deck. But that's just, you know, you can let the developer answer that one if you'd like.
No, that's a perfect explanation.
Okay.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Yeah, I think that, you know, you have a subdivision that is being developed. We are encouraging people to move into the city of South Lyon. I think right now that you have some homeowners over there in that subdivision that are wishing they never moved to South Lyon. I have to thank the developer for building a larger home than maybe what was originally anticipated, because that is bringing additional property tax revenue into the city that we did not already have. So I want to thank you for doing a good job on marketing the size of those homes, even though they're a little bit larger than maybe what was anticipated, because the end beneficiary of those larger homes is clearly the city and the tax dollars that are used to pay people's salaries and everything else that goes on in the city. Real estate is sort of a art, and you don't always get it right. And if you're not good at being flexible with how you make these minor adjustments as a development gets down the line or moves down the line, I think that's where you run into public relations problems. And I think this is a very simple problem to solve. It is consistent with what is going to happen with the ordinance. There's no snowball effect here at all, because it is a planned development. And that is your distinction, is that not every development is a planned development. When you have a planned development, you have the freedom to make these adjustments that you would not normally be able to do. It's not unusual for a developer to come and make these minor adjustments when they are dealing with planned development. So I'm not opposed to this. It appears to be consistent with what is going to occur with the ordinance. I agree with you, Carmine. I think you've done a lot of hard work and legwork on here. I don't think there's, I think everyone's worked very hard to work and get to the numbers. They're consistent, like I said, with the ordinance. And I'm going to approve this. I want to support those homeowners that are moving into our city. I want to welcome them in. And I like this, hopefully, maybe to go through tonight so those homeowners can maybe have a deck by Labor Day, because they sure didn't get it by the 4th of July. So,
Councilmember Friesen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Carmine, I have a question for you. Just out of curiosity, if this doesn't pass tonight, what's the detriment?
And are there 2 readings on this, Tim, or is there one?
No, this would be one reading.
One, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
The detriment is that they won't be able to build decks yet. It's,
No, they'll have to go to ZBA.
Yeah, they'll take the appeal
Yes.
process.
oh boy, yeah, they could, but that,
So again,
But it's a
to counter
process.
the argument, they can take the appeal process.
that's ridiculous.
Well, so here's my thing. I was thinking with this, these people spent quite a bit of money on a very lovely home, on lovely homes. So if they want that additional space, it's the use of their property. They can't enjoy their property. They can't enjoy that nature view if we don't allow them to have this. So I'm in favor of it. Again, it's great having people come to South Lyon. The tax base for these homes is fantastic. So I'm not going to complain about that. And to me, this is a minor adjustment. So, and with any ordinance, with any resolution, with anything that we do in municipal government in general, there's always changes and tweaks constantly.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just one of those moments. Thank you, Carmine.
Okay.
Councilmember Kibble?
I don't want to make anybody misunderstand my position. I'm absolutely an advocate, and I'm grateful that the people have moved to South Lyon. It's just that they've been caught up in something that was unforecastable for me. I didn't really give consideration. The setback thing was my concern, not the lot coverage part. But nonetheless, they have an address by ZBA until if I saw documents that were other communities that had like-sized lots, and it's been demonstrated this is the most typical percentage of relief that they end up getting, I would be more inclined to just roll. I want the thing to be the comprehensive review of addressing the whole circumstance, not simply one of. So I just don't want anyone thinking that I don't want to end up supporting our residents. It's simply that I don't think that this is the way that we should be proceeding.
I don't either.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
I'd like to move to approve the First Amendment to Knowles of South Lyon Plan Development Agreement to increase the maximum lot coverage percentage to clarify the regulations applicable to decks, patios, and other structures in rear yards as presented and attached as the First Amendment, adding section 11, paren, capital M, close paren, period.
Second?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Well?
I would just like to point out that I did make slight language changes in the revised 7-9 version of this. It says the same thing, it's just slightly rearranged. So I would ask that, just from a information standpoint, that the council be approving the revised 2018 7-9 in the bottom left corner version.
I'll amend my motion that the First Amendment is to be referred to as the revised 2018-07-09 version, which I will attach, request that the secretary attach to the minutes. Is there a second on my amendment?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
Aye.
Lisa, do we need to do a roll call on that?
No, that's just the amendment.
Okay.
That's just the amendment that that refers to this.
That's what I thought,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, you were correct, Mr. Mayor.
So you still have a
Right.
full motion with a second on the
Correct.
floor, correct?
So we have a motion and a second that's been amended. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
No.
No.
Roll call, please.
Explain the motion a little bit better that we're voting on.
So the first one was just an amendment. Lisa, go ahead.
Okay, Brazian,
Yes.
Kennedy,
No.
Hybel,
No.
Richards,
No.
Walton,
Yes.
Kurzweil,
Yes.
Alcat,
Yes. Motion passes. We'll move on to new business number 3. Consider purchase of 2018 backhoe loader from CAT.
I have a comment there.
Councilmember Kivel?
If nobody objects, I'd like to recuse myself from the decision because my wife is employed at Michigan Cat Engine Division.
Okay.
that's right.
I'm good.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Walton, go ahead.
I believe Ms.
Go on, make the
Kurzweil
motion.
Councilmember Kurtzwell, please.
I was just going to move to approve the purchase of a 2018 Caterpillar Model 420-52 APR and backhoe loader from CAT for the total price with trade-in of $89,448.65.
I'll second.
Do we need clarification on who seconded that?
Steve can have it.
Okay.
That's fine.
Thank you.
It's like a race.
Look at the film.
Motion's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Consider purchase of 3 sets of firefighting turnout gear. Does anyone have any questions for Chief Vogel, who is in the crowd?
Yeah, the vehicle purchase.
Oh,
first,
did I?
please.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize. New business number 4, consider purchase of 2019 Ford Super Duty truck. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Beeson?
No.
Mayor,
Councilmember Walton.
I'd like to make the motion to approve the purchase of a 2019 Ford Super Duty 4x4 truck from Varsity Ford under the state county bid at the cost of $30,183.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Thanks for being here.
Good job, Ron.
All right, now we'll move forward to new business number 5. Consider purchase of 3 sets of firefighting turnout gear. If anyone has any questions for Chief Vogel.
Do we need 3 bids?
Well, that's what we're asking for. We're asking for a waiver.
Sure.
I spoke to Chief Kennedy and my captain regarding gear purchase. We used to use Lyon apparel, and apparently it was a nightmare. So we found a great vendor who gives us a great price. They used them last year. It's been great customer service, and we're just asking to use them again. I don't like having multiple manufacturers in my gear gear. So we've gone to Globe. I even did it my previous employer also. So
I have a question.
Councilmember Friesen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This might be a little forward, and I don't know who would be able to answer this, because I know the police department gets a allotted amount for uniforms. Does the fire department have uniforms they wear on a daily basis?
yes, and we have budgeted line item for uniforms.
Okay, just want to make sure. 'Cause-
Once a firefighter becomes full-pledged firefighter 1 and 2 and EMT, we pay for them to get gear to wear for training, for shifts. So, and that is budgeted item, but that's separate. That's usually, it meets the threshold of a PO, but we do it in, individual
Okay.
purchases.
Just wanna make
It's
sure
not every
we're
year
fair.
for everybody.
Excellent, thank you.
Question.
Councilmember Richards, go ahead.
Do you have the policy where you turn in some of the old fire gear equipment or can resell it, okay, to another
It's not a good
agency?
policy to sell fire gear. Generally, when it hits a certain age, it's just disposed of. And yes, we do have a policy that, the only people that take gear home are firefighters or fire officers. We don't allow the firefighters to take it home unless they're going to training or some type of event outside the city. So the gear always stays in the station.
It's always the city's property.
It always the city's property. It is not given, it is loaned to the firefighter.
Well,
Once we get it back, when they resign, we clean it and then recycle it back into our stock unless it hits an age limit, and then we retire it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, part of the issues we have is since we have a good population of female firefighters, we're having trouble getting them fit. They don't fit in men's gear very well, so we've been specializing purchasing for them.
But
Yes.
Can't you use it for training purposes? The
Once
gear?
it's retired, we throw it away. It's just a good policy to use a gear until it reaches its age limit and then retire it.
I would imagine the concern of that would be, is that training gear getting mixed up with proper gear?
Well, another best policy is to train in the same gear that we use.
Right.
The problem with fire gear is when it comes new, it's very, very rigid. So as we train in it, go to calls in it, it becomes more comfortable.
It's like shoes, yeah.
Yeah, and then when it hits to that 15 year, we retire it.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to make the motion to waive Section 2-24 of the City of South Lyon Code of Ordinances, approval for purchases or contracts over $2,000, competitive bidding for purchase or contracts over $5,000, because no advantage to the city would result from competitive bidding.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Thanks, Chief.
I'd like to make a motion for the award of the purchase of 3 sets of firefighting turnout gear to First Due Fire Supply for $6,524.84.
Second.
I'll second, okay, go ahead.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Chief.
Thank you.
Number 6 on new business this evening, consider approval of bid to replace police/fire administration building roof. The recommendation on this is to approve the roof replacement by the lowest bidder, the roof company.
Finally, you don't have to wear your raincoat at work.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Chief.
Thank you. Yes, we did obtain 3 bids. We are recommending the lowest bid. In the budget that council approved, we had estimated the possibility of spending up to $20,000, not knowing how the bids would come in. So we're significantly under the budgeted amount at $13,490.
Thanks, Chief.
Mr. Mayor?
I'll say something.
Councilmember Richards, go ahead.
Well, I'm glad to see we get a low bid on this, but having been in the roofing profession once upon a time, the roof in question is a very difficult roof in matter of degree, the complexity of that building. I hope that the supervision and the, I don't know if HRC is going to monitor a roof job or not, but somebody inspects that, because if they don't know what they're doing, they can give you a bad job. That's what it boils down to. Okay. Whereas McCotter, that was the highest bid, you know, there's too a lot of money. They bid them high anyway. But I like their work. I don't know this company that we've awarded this contract to. Okay. But for the bang for the buck, I hope we can make sure that we get a good job on the over roof on this, the re-roof. That's all my comment is, okay?
Thanks, Councilmember Richards. Councilmember Walton?
I'd like to make the motion to accept the bid by the roof company to replace the roof on the police fire admin building at the cost of $13,490.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. New business number 7, consider approval of city manager job description. Description. Recommendation is to approve the city manager job description recommended by Mr. Vitrino.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the package that council has before them is somewhat self-explanatory, and that Mr. Vitrino very strongly suggested prior to certainly completing the process for the hiring of a new city manager that we have in place a city manager job description, which the city has not had in the past. Mr. Vitrino was kind enough to send forward the proposed city manager job description. Of course, council could also direct either myself or the city attorney to make changes or come back to council with some other options.
I have a question.
Councilmember Friesen, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just want to be clear. We already have 30 applicants, correct? Over 30 applicants?
That was as of the weekly report from about a week ago. We're now up to about 43, I believe.
So I guess my question is, why didn't we have this prior? Why are we just doing this now? Not that it's you, I'm just saying in general. How come?
I understand. I don't know why there wasn't one in place prior, and that's why we're proposing it now.
It seems a little backward to me. If I'm going to apply for a job, I want to see what the description is before I apply for it and understand whether or not I'm qualified before I apply for the position, not after I applied for it. So, I mean, I have no problem moving this forward. It just seems like it's a little too late, but who knows?
Yeah, I think city manager job descriptions are
Pretty standard.
pretty standard. Yeah, that's a good term for it.
So this is more extensive.
So I think
certainly.
they knew what to expect. This is just putting in writing what we expect of our city manager.
Which is what we should have done before we allowed people to apply for a job for the city of South Lyon.
And we somewhat did that in the job posting and the brochure that Mr. Vitrino put out.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Kivel?
Well, I think that this is pretty thorough and comprehensive, and it addresses anything that I think is commonsensical about our expectations for somebody that's going to be the city manager. So I'd make the motion that we approve the city manager job description recommended by Mr. Vitrino.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Move on to the budget this evening.
I wanted to. That's true. I did the same thing.
Where's the budget?
Does anyone have anything for the budget this evening?
No, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the manager's report. Chief Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the packet, council will find the application and approval packet for the Whipple Street Block Party. It has been approved and it's included only as an informational item. Council bestowed upon the police chief the authority to grant the smaller block parties without every road closure coming to council. The Whipple Street Block Party is scheduled for Saturday, August 11th from noon until 9:30 p.m. Another issue of great importance to the residents of the Trotters Point subdivision. I spent a very large amount of time over the last week or so dealing with subcontractors working on the Comcast cable project in the Trotters Point sub. Subcontractor Corner Cable, who was in turn contracted by B&M Ashman Incorporated, has damaged 2 natural gas lines, 1 water line, 1 DT electrical line, and 1 AT&T cable line since beginning installation of the underground Comcast cable lines. I met with and had telephone conversations with numerous representatives of all of the aforementioned companies, and I had additional telephone conversations with Mr. Brian Dunn, who is a representative of the Trotters Point Homeowners Association. I can say that since contacting the government affairs representative from Comcast Cable and speaking with their senior construction manager, that, and I'm crossing my fingers on this, there have been no new reports of damage. So maybe we've made some progress there. Next, the city received an electronic fund transfer from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration in the amount of $3,442.01. The money received under the Equitable Sharing Program was from forfeiture funds earned by Officer John Tominick while he was assigned to the DEA task force. And aside, as John has been back from the DEA task force for a while now, and he is currently out on disability with a back issue. So that puts us 2 people down in the police department. And my final item is the city received a check in the amount of $14,000 from the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority. The money was from a grant from the MMRMA under the Risk Avoidance Program. The RAP grant, REP, was for the Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition, or SCADA system, recently approved and installed in the Water and Wastewater Department. The RAP grant application was both written and submitted to MMRMA by me. And that concludes my report.
Thanks,
Well
Chief.
done, Chief.
Councilmember Kennedy, go ahead.
Chief, just well, congratulations on the SCADA reimbursement. We certainly appreciate that to begin with.
Alternative revenue sources.
That's right. Secondly, any feedback from GFL on when they're going to start dropping off those recycling bins? It's just 1 week into the program. Just curious if they've started that process yet.
I'm not aware of the delivery of any. I know that I was one of the first to apply from the city website to GFL. I can say with confidence that my green bin has not been delivered as of yet. We are trying to stay out of the bin business, and that's why we have put on the city water bills and the city website to apply directly to GFL. If too much time goes by and those bins don't start getting delivered, then I will have another conversation with GFL regarding contract compliance.
Great. Certainly appreciate it.
Thank you for that update. It was a great question, Steve. There's been several questions brought up about that this week leading up to this meeting. Did anyone have anything else for Chief Collins? Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
At this time, we're going to open it back up for public comment. If anyone has anything they'd like to say, please state your name and address.
Now's the time.
All right, we'll move on to council comments. Tonight, we'll start with Councilmember Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. First, as the SEMCOG delegate for the city, I had the opportunity to attend the SEMCOG General Assembly meeting at the end of last month at the Little Caesars Arena. It included a behind-the-scenes tour of the facility and also included participating in the election of new SEMCOG officers for the upcoming year, one of whom, our own Oakland County Commissioner Phil Weipert, was inducted as the new chairman of SEMCOG for next year. So I want to congratulate Phil and his wife, Pam, who supports him in every one of his endeavors to support our county and our city. And secondly, I want to recognize a longtime city employee, as well as a friend and neighbor, Judy Archie, who retired at the end of May after 21 years of working for our city, providing admin support for the water and wastewater department. Judy was the person who kept track of the billing and invoices for the department, as well as providing the budget effort support for Lyndon Beebe when he was the department head, and then followed by Bob Martin when he took over that position. She's also the person that over the past 21 years assigned the new addresses for all the new residents that came into the city. As the development in the city took off, the population doubled from around 6,000 people in the early 1990s to its current level of almost 12,000. And during all that time, Judy was always there working tirelessly to support the operators in the plant, as well as the other employees in the city. And like so many of them, rarely if ever gets the recognition and appreciation that they truly deserve. So I'd like to take this opportunity to wish Judy Archie and her husband Steve the very best as they get a chance to enjoy retirement and spend more time with their friends, family, and those grandkids. So thanks so much, Judy, for everything you've done for South Lyon. And that's all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. That was a great comment. Councilmember Richards.
Well, following up Councilman Kennedy's comment about the SEMCOG, I'd like to point out to people, and there's nobody here, Councilman Kennedy gave me a state of Michigan emblem that's cut by laser, and it says SEMCOG on it, Southeast Michigan Council of Governments 50th anniversary. And these were made by Superb Fabricating in this town. And it's quite an achievement. Anyway, you're supposed to put it on your keychain. Eventually I'll put it on another keychain, but I thought I'd bring it to the council meeting and show it off, okay, to everybody out there, okay. And also I'd like to mention that today the DPW started work on the replacement of the playground equipment in McCaddy Park on the north side. I made the motion in the last meeting to start it, and they had it all roped or sectioned off with the orange barrier tape, and they worked on it a good while till about 1:30, 2 o'clock when they had a little mishap, and the backhoe went out of order, and they had to get the front end loader to haul the backhoe home, which was kind of interesting. I was watching it from the gazebo. But anyway, they're off to a good start, in my opinion, and I made an attempt to try to see if we couldn't salvage the equipment and give it to the trailer park or somebody else. But everybody said no. They would be under the same restrictions that Parks and Recs was because of the age of the equipment, and it had to come out. So they just busted it all up and threw it in a pile. And they still got some more to go, but the project is underway, that's what I'm saying. And we're going to have new playground equipment for the kids. That's all I can say tonight, I guess. That's good enough.
All right, thank you very much, Councilmember Richards. Councilmember Parisian.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few things, but I'll try to make them quick. So on Saturday, July 14th, there's going to be the 12th Annual Injured Soldiers Lyon Ride and Classic Car Show. So even though this is in Lyon Township, I think it's important that we support Lyon Township as well as our neighboring communities, Green Oak, Salem, etc., especially because this is such an important event. This event is going to encompass the car show, the picnic, a raffle, and it's going to be held at James Atchison Park, New Hudson, Lyon Township. So again, if you need more information on that, it's going to be www.injuredsoldiers.org. Important to check out, so mark your calendars for this Saturday. Also, as always, every meeting, I'm going to say it, volunteers. We need them. If you know them, let them know that we need you. So we need Planning Commission, Parks and Rec, Historical Commission, and the Historical Society, Board of Review, and Cultural Arts. So spread the word. We can use some help on our boards and commissions. Also, kind of piggybacking along with what Councilmember Kennedy had just mentioned, thank you, Judy, to all your service. You have been an absolute pleasure to come visit at the Water Department. Thank you. And lastly, Chief, I just wanted to say that I know we are going through and picking and choosing the process of having a new city manager come in and what we want them to do and what their qualifications are, but you have done an outstanding job. The fact that you brought in a grant, I have never seen a grant brought in by a city manager since I've been on council. So excellent job. That is a first that I can remember, and I've been here for almost 3 years. So that's leaps and bounds. Even if it's just one, but that's $14,000 in additional revenue. That's huge. So that, along with the fact that we are getting thank you letters every meeting from things that are going on in the community, thanking you or the police department or the fire department, you're running the ship really well. And I hope that the next person we come in as our city manager can fill your shoes. So thank you for setting the example.
Thank you.
With that, have a great night.
Thank you, Councilmember Parisian. Councilmember Walton?
I don't have any comments tonight, so I just want to tell everybody to stay cool in this heat.
Yeah. Thank you. Councilmember Kibble?
I was enjoying seeing the progress that's taking place downtown. That really is exciting, and I'm looking forward to, as my question to Bob earlier, to seeing the selection of paint colors, and when you see that all that the bracketry above in the cornice, and just to see that whole project come alive with a paint job. I think that's going to be very impressive. And I've heard some comments about the 115, 117, some people having concerns with because the 1930s brick job, it's in wonderful condition, but they're concerned that cornice work and the brackets up above won't end up being reflective of that time period and maybe provide as much pop as they were hoping for. I'm choosing to be patient and wait until the thing's concluded. I really do look forward to the 117 side with the new cladding and things. I think that'll be an interesting contrast from old to modern, and to see it take place in one jump of a storefront ought to be really exciting. I'm also hoping that we quickly start seeing some opportunities with Artcraft and the RCA building, see some forward progress in making those things available by putting them on the market, clear out the old stuff, get some people looking at them that have some interest in throwing some money into those, and open up 2 new storefronts. That'll be very exciting too. But there's an awful lot of really, really positive things taking place right now, and I'm looking forward to this continued trajectory. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember Kibble. Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I am going to put to rest a rumor that apparently has started with some seniors in a senior community. It's a falsehood, and I want to make sure that I address it tonight. The falsehood pertains to the school district deciding to retain the services of the Oakland County Sheriff as the SRO officer at both the high school and the middle school. The falsity that is being distributed or talked about or passed out to some of the seniors is that the South Lyon Police Department will lose police officers as a result of the school district's decision to hire the Oakland County Sheriff. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that whoever is starting this is an absolute lie. That I am not aware of any police officer that has lost their job or will lose their job because of the school district's decision. So we have our suspicions as to who may be circulating this falsity. All I can say is that whoever you are not helping the image of the South Lyon Police Department when you talk like this, because it is a lie. And it really does not do anybody any good when you talk like this. So if you are trying to fear-monger the seniors, I would ask that you stop it and that you be honest. And once again, not one police officer is losing their job because of the district's choice of law enforcement for the school resource officer. Speaking of the school resource officers, I would like to thank Lyon Township and its Board of Trustees for taking the lead and professionally working with the South Lyon School District to ensure the best and most capable law enforcement agency to protect the school children in our region. As many of you already know, the Oakland County Sheriff is one of the top county law enforcement agencies in the country, and their yearly budget is approaching $160 million. They are the #1 sheriff in the state of Michigan. So if you look at your most recent property tax statement, you will see that certain property taxes go to the Oakland County, a portion of which is the sheriff's department. So I definitely don't mind paying the county mill because I know that it's being well spent on law enforcement. So I would like to thank Lyon Township. I'd also like to thank the Oakland County Sheriff's Department for moving forward with a security plan that protects all students located in all communities. And I particularly want to thank Lyon Township for working regionally and amicably with the residents and particularly the parents that expressed an interest and a desire in the law enforcement that was chosen by the district. Next, please don't forget the Four Seasons Garden Club Walk this weekend, which is July 14th. You can purchase tickets at the Salem South Lyon Library on Saturday. The gardens are open for visitors at 10 o'clock a.m. All I'm going to say about one of the gardens, all I'm going to say is Monroe Landscaping. This is a family landscaping company that has been a staple in our area for a very long time. They have a great reputation. They have done some great and incredible work. Again, keep your eyes open for this garden. All I'm going to say is this fabulous landscaping company, Monroe Landscaping. Next, I'd like to thank GFL. They've been a wonderful, wonderful organization. I know I've been pleased with their service. It's hot. Their trucks aren't always going to run on time. I think their workers have been outstanding. I try on a real hot day to run out if I'm home and give them water. I just can't imagine doing that work 14 hours a day. I've received excellent service from GFL, and I want to thank them, and the next time we see Sam, I'll pass that along. I also met last with several taxpayers over the last month, and they wanted me to pass along to the mayor how pleased they are to have him as the city's mayor. And I said, I definitely agree. So you have a huge fan club out there, Mr. Mayor, and I just wanted to let you know that we all applaud the hard work that you're doing, and thank you for everything that you're doing for the city. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councilmember Kurtzwell, for those comments. I'll make this short, too. Really quickly, this weekend, I want to remind everyone, if you're up for some All-Star Little League Baseball at South Lyon High School, the South Lyon Junior League's doing their All-Star Weekend. I haven't been in many, many years, probably, since I played, and I'm definitely planning on attending. I'm very excited. Hopefully the weather will be good for everybody out there. And on also a side note for our Cable Commission, they've brought on a great intern this summer. He actually used to work with me at the school district as an intern as well. He attends the University of Toledo. His name's Ben Wolak, and he is the individual that helps with the parades, and he does those awesome drone shots. Councilmember Kennedy had a great idea to have him get some shots of the downtown that they're redoing and the water tower so we can do a before and after. And I saw some of those clips. They're raw footage. They haven't been done yet, but they'll be on Channel 19. They'll be on the YouTube page. So keep up the good work, Ben. People are noticing. It's great. And stay here as long as you can because obviously you're going to do very well in what you're doing. So thank you. Finally tonight, personally, I'd like to thank Chief Collins. I came in here as a rookie mayor, and the desk that this individual had to take over was beyond messy, with paperwork all over the place, certain things falling through the cracks or just outright ignored. And, you know, he's obviously been a stabilizing part of this community, and it's been an honor to work with you. I never have to question if you're working in the best interests of the city, so I want to thank you for that. And yeah, some big shoes to fill when we get somebody else in here, so thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
On that, we are looking to go into a closed session tonight. So that's all I have. If anyone wants to help us maneuver our way over there.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Willem.
So we have 2 reasons to go into closed session. One is to discuss strategy and negotiation for collective bargaining with IUOE. And the other is to consider the purchase or lease of real property pursuant to 8D. So the first reason, collective bargaining, is a majority vote requirement. And the purchase or lease of real property is a 2/3 requirement. I think last meeting we did separate votes for each basis to go into closed session.
Okay.
And they are roll call votes.
Yes, I did write that down.
Little heads up, yeah.
I may have tripped over my own feet like 3 other times this evening, but I did have roll call vote written on my agenda tonight. So do we need a motion for that? Or?
You do need a motion
Okay.
and a roll call vote.
I move that we go into closed session pursuant to Section 8C of the Open Meetings Act, MCL 15.28 or 268C, to discuss strategy of negotiations for collective bargaining agreement between the City of South Lyon and IUOE Local 324.
A second?
Kibble?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Parisian?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Walton?
No.
Kurzweil?
No.
Alcheck?
Yes.
I also make a motion that we, let's see, we consider the purchase or lease of real property pursuant to Section 8D of the Open Meetings Act, MCL 125.368D.
A second?
Kibble?
Yes?
Kennedy?
Yes.
Parisian?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Walton?
No.
Kurzweil?
No.
Alcheck?
Yes.
So both motions passed.
Are we still doing the move to the other room thing?
Yes, I'm going to hang up a sign this week, though, to clarify with our friends on TV so they don't think that the channel
Oh, yes,
froze.
there you go. It's frozen, yeah.
Okay. All right. Leave everything right here?
Everything that you don't need over there.
Oh, I got my,
Yeah, is that for you?
okay, my other envelope is down here.
I cannot take credit for the sign, although I wish I could.
You make the motion.
The elevator music.
You make the motion. Let's wait. Make the motion, we go back into open session.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Hit the gavel.
I make a motion that we ratify the IUOE Local 324 contract submitted by Johnson Rosati, Pat Azeltine from Johnson Rosati.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
I'll make the motion that we instruct the city attorney to pursue the course of action we discussed relative to the real estate purchase.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I'll make the motion, we adjourn.
Aye. I mean.
Is that gonna be roll call?
Have a great night, everyone.